Hello, my name is Carla, and you are joining us with Drinks and Dialogue. We are here today to do some reaction to the Prime Minister Trudeau's speech about the trade wars that Donnie started. And you are?
I'm Grace, and I am Carla's partner in crime here, because I thought this was a great idea. And yes, so the first thing we're going to react to is Prime Minister Trudeau's speech yesterday, indicating that Canadians are not happy about this.
But first, cheers.
Cheers.
I think each video should start with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to play the video, and we have some thoughts that we want to share with you.
States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. I think that makes sense. Canadians are reasonable, and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight.
Sorry. Couldn't get my mouse to work.
That's okay. Happens to the best of us. I think that's one of the things that is so shocking, I think, to everybody, whether you're Canadian, American, Ukrainian, is that, like, I never thought I would ever see the day when the President of the United States was berating the President of the Ukraine because Russia invaded them and putting tariffs on his closest allies. Like, it's just, I feel like I'm in an upside down world these days.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the really unfortunately sad thing about all of this is that just because of the behavior of one man and his administration, the amount of anti-Americanism that has popped up around the world, it has skyrocketed. I mean, don't get me wrong, Americans have never been the most popular of people anyway, but this is 10 times worse.
They're kind of like your big brother or big sister. You know, it used to be that, you know, you like to make fun of them and whatnot, but it wasn't overly serious. And if anybody else made fun of them, you know, we'd rush to their defense. But this just was beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, you want to continue?
Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake. At the moment, the U.S. tariffs came into effect in the early hours of this morning, and so did the Canadian response. Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion of American products in 21 days' time. Encore aujourd'hui, on se voit forcé d'imposer des droits de douane de 25%
to introduce 25% tariffs on $155 billion of U.S. merchandise.
I want to pause just to let those know who are not from Canada that the reason why he's speaking French now is that we are an official bilingual country, both English and French, and so he, as the just about said president, as the Prime Minister, he's addressing the nation, so he's using both official languages. Sometimes, and you have to kind of watch, sometimes the interpretation, you'll realize that he's saying something new in French. Sometimes he's just repeating. So, yeah, that's all.
$30 billion will come into effect immediately, and in 21 days, $125 billion of U.S. merchandise will be hit.
Be challenging these illegal actions by filing dispute resolution claims at the World Trade Organization and through the USMCA. But in the meantime, our tariffs will remain in place until the U.S. tariffs are withdrawn, and not a moment sooner. And should these tariffs not cease, we are in active and ongoing discussions with provinces and territories to pursue several non-tariff measures. Measures which will demonstrate that there are no...
One thing I was fascinated to listen when he said that, non-tariff measures, but he hasn't indicated what that is. Now, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Doug Ford's threat to slap an export tariff on electricity going south of the border.
Doug Ford has done more than that.
I know he's done more than that, but like the one that comes to mind right now is
that would be a tariff one. That would just be a big tariff one. A non-tariff one would be, we're shutting your electricity off, which he has threatened to do.
Yes, that's true. He has.
You know, so to me, that's a non-tariff one. I don't know. I mean, there's a number of different things. I mean, I've wondered whether he'll shut the border right down. If the border's the issue, shut it down. They did it for COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. We did it for COVID. And I would, quite frankly, have zero problem with that.
Me too.
Winners in a trade war. Now, just like I did a month ago, I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Your government has chosen to put a...
Have you seen the copy of Donnie's tweet going around where it says, any president whose stock market falls more than 1,000 points should be impeached immediately?
I have seen that one. And that was from back in 2012.
Yeah, it didn't age very well.
No, but then nothing he says ages well.
No, that's true. I also wanted to just kind of talk really quickly about the whole we don't want to do this. And I think, like, I haven't talked to anybody who is saying, hey, stick it to the Americans. Nobody's saying that. Everybody realizes that this is Donnie and his crew. There are, I know, a lot of Republicans that still follow him. I really don't understand it. I can't comprehend it when it flies in the face of all logic. But then again, we also have those in Canada who are far right, who are saying that, you know, the worst thing we could do is to retaliate with tariffs. That's an idiotic thing to do. I was reading that one today and I'm like, oh God.
These are also the same ones that say, let's become the 51st state.
Did you see that on podcast, Ryan Jesperson's podcast?
I did not.
He talked to somebody who they want to get a petition together for Alberta to leave Canada. And I'm like, I'm going to have to leave this province. I was born in the oil fields. I was raised in the wheat fields, but that will be the end of it. Mm-hmm. I am a tried and true born Albertan, but that would be the end of it.
Oh, absolutely. There is no way. There's absolutely no way that me and my family would stay here if that were to happen.
It would be mass.
And the fact remains is that as loud as the 51st staters are, and they are really loud, don't get me wrong, they're extremely loud. Well, they are also the minority.
Oh, absolutely. And then they're not even loud so much as they're just whiny.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it.
Anyway, if we're going to make it through this 14 minutes, we better get going.
American jobs at risk, at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada, or both. They've chosen to raise costs for American consumers on everyday essential items like groceries and gas, on major purchases like cars and homes, and everything in between. They've chosen to harm American national security, impeding access to the abundant critical minerals, energy, building materials, and fertilizers that we have and that the United States needs to grow and prosper. They've chosen to launch a trade war that will, first and foremost, harm American families. They've chosen to sabotage their own agenda that was supposed to usher in a new golden age for the United States. And they've chosen to undermine the incredible work we've done together to tackle the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that must be wiped from the face of the earth. So on that point, let me be crystal clear. There is absolutely no justification or need whatsoever for these tariffs today. Now, the legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false. Let's look at the facts. Our border is already safe and secure. Far less than 1% of fentanyl flows and less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States comes from Canada. But we acted because we know we can always do better. We responded to concerns, including from the President, by implementing an ambitious $1.3 billion border plan. A border plan that includes generational investments in new AI and imaging tools to stop the flow of fentanyl in its tracks, stronger coordination and information sharing with American agencies.
I just wanted to add, except I was having trouble getting my mouse to work there, that one line that he said, you know, we're already doing this, but we can always do better.
Yeah.
I mean, just the what's the word I want for that? Like, it's just, I don't know if the humble is the right word.
That's the word. That's the word that was coming to me. It was a very diplomatic response because the fact of the matter is, it's not about fentanyl. Everybody knows it's not about fentanyl.
Oh, yeah.
If it's about fentanyl, well, then it can be about guns. It can be about the drugs coming into Canada, the guns coming into Canada. This has nothing to do with fentanyl.
Exactly, especially considering the fact that we have more fentanyl coming at us than we do away from us.
And the thing that I don't understand about the Republicans who still support Donnie is that in the face of facts, they still support him. In the face of their own self-interest going, you know, like the farmers that supported him, the federal workers that supported him, all of these people that supported him, and some of them still are. They still think this man is doing what's best for them. I can't even. I can't even.
No, absolutely.
But, you know, one of the things, as if it isn't already obvious, we're both very left-leaning. But I have never been on the Trudeau bandwagon one way or the other. I've never really gotten intricately involved in federal politics. So, I mean, I can take or leave. But I have been so proud of our Prime Minister, both during COVID and now. He has risen to the occasion, and this is what a leader looks like. Speaking as he speaks throughout here, and there's a place where he refers to Donnie as being a smart guy. I'm like, how do you say that without choking? But like, he still puts aside his ego in order to try and reason with this man. It was like Zelensky. The fact that he will even talk to Donnie just blows my mind. That is a man who is a leader and is willing to do what it takes. Donnie just wants to do what it takes for him. Anyway, I'm getting riled up. I need more
along with the deployment of drones, helicopters, and additional personnel to keep our border secure. Now, a month ago, as part of an agreement with the United States that paused the tariffs, we made further commitments. We appointed Kevin Brasseau as our fentanyl czar, a man who dedicated his multi-decade career in law enforcement to combating organized crime networks and drug trafficking. We designated 7 drug cartels, sick, evil groups who cynically profit off the pain and suffering of people on both sides of the border, as the terrorist organizations that they are. And just yesterday, we launched a new joint operations partnership supported by a $200 million investment between Canada's security and law enforcement agencies, a partnership that will enhance the coordination of information and intelligence in order to thwart criminal gangs involved in the illegal fentanyl trade. And critically, our actions are working. As the U.S. Customs and Border Protection just acknowledged, there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seizures from January compared to December, to a near zero low of less than half an ounce seized in January, even with all the further enforcements and actions we've taken at the borders. In sum, we stepped up. We engaged closely and constructively with the President and his administration. We did everything we promised. We stuck to our word. And we did it because we believe in working together to protect our citizens. Now I want to speak directly to one specific American.
I love this.
Donald. In the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal that has created record jobs and growth in both of our countries. We've done big things together on the world stage, as Canada and the US have done together for decades, for generations. And now we should be working together to ensure even greater prosperity for North Americans in a very uncertain and challenging world. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see.
Can you pause it for a second?
And now, to my...
I think that is one of the things that we need to, that isn't always clear to people. I have heard Canadians say, well, why are we giving money to the Ukraine? How come we're giving money to these people and whatever? And one thing I don't think people realize is that as a democratic country, it is in our best interest that countries remain democratic. It is, if we don't come to their aid, like the Ukraine, when they're being attacked by a country that is not a democratic country, then we risk our own sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't think people are so fixated on the money. And, to all our Americans, I'm sorry, but there's such a fixation with money in the States. The fact that Trump would say, we need to get our money's worth of the money that we sent you, Zelensky. I'm like, how ridiculous is that? Not one other country has expected money back from the Ukraine. What you get back is keeping democracy safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so when you hear Canadians griping about the money sent to Ukraine, I don't think that people realize that the money that's being sent is from seized Russian assets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are assets that were in Canada for whatever reason, and then Russia attacked Ukraine, and so the Canadian government froze all Russian assets. So the money that Canada is sending to Ukraine is Russian money.
Yeah. Yep.
My fellow Canadians, I won't sugarcoat it. This is going to be tough, even though we're all going to pull together, because that's what we do. We will use every tool at our disposal so Canadian workers and businesses can weather this storm. From expanding EI benefits and making them more flexible to providing direct supports to businesses, we will be there as needed to help. But Canada, make no mistake, no matter how long this lasts, no matter what the cost, the federal government and other orders of government will be there for you. We will defend Canadian jobs. We will take measures to prevent predatory behavior that threatens Canadian companies because of the impacts of this trade war, leaving them open to takeovers. We will relentlessly fight to protect our economy. We will stand up for Canadians every single second of every single day, because this country is worth fighting for. Les derniers mois ont été stressants.
The recent months have...
I like that. I mean, essentially what he is planning on doing, or what his government is planning on doing, is exactly what they did during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no questions asked. If you qualify for CERB, you're getting CERB.
Yeah, $2,000 a month per person if you qualify. And a lot of people, it was not a high bar to qualify.
Oh, heck no. Heck no. I mean, I know that in our household, because of the fact that I'm a small business owner, I didn't qualify for CERB. My husband did.
Mm-hmm.
And so the CERB that he received at least kept us afloat.
Yeah. Well, and actually, you would have been qualified through EI. But anyway, that's a different, don't we get into that?
But the point being, the government is there for Canadians because that's what Canadians expect.
Well, and I think after we listen to this, we're going to listen to the official opposition leader speak about it. And I'm looking forward to covering that.
Been stressful and, in fact, exhausting for all of us. But I believe we can be reassured by the incredible solidarity we've seen among Canadians. Solidarity among businesses, among unions, the civil society, Indigenous communities, and all Canadians. All of Canadian society is speaking with a single voice so that we can be heard by our U.S. partners and to illustrate that the imposition of these tariffs is a very bad idea. At the same time, we are working internally to remove the barriers to internal trade between the provinces and territories. We're working to try and reach new markets around the world to build an economy even more strong and resilient than before. In recent years, I've had a number of opportunities to talk to global leaders, and my message is always the same. Canada is a reliable partner, and our door is wide open. In recent weeks, we have also redoubled our efforts to work with Mexico, which is also being hit with these tariffs. Together, we will seek new ways of working together and to provide mutual support in the face of this threat. In the face of uncertainty and worry, Canadians have shown so much solidarity. I saw you sharing lists of Canadian products to help your loved ones and friends and support Canadian businesses. I saw you change your travel plans to stay in Canada rather than going to the United States. I saw you redouble your efforts to support our small businesses and our workers here in Canada. I saw you defend our culture and ensure it can flourish. I saw you encourage our athletes with incredible fervor, and I thought I could never be even prouder of my country and my compatriots. And yet, I still have something to ask of you. Do not give up. This is the time to redouble your efforts, to stand up for our country, to do everything we possibly can to choose Canada and defend Canada. Together, we will get through some tough times. But after seeing you and seeing your reaction in recent weeks, I have to say, I have never been as optimistic with respect to the future of our beautiful country, in spite of all the challenges we're facing right now.
And I love that. I mean, he is well aware of what's going on. I mean, you saw the video at the Four Nations Cup game that was at the Bell Centre in Montreal, and he was in the crowd with everybody else screaming out, "Oh, Canada," you know, with and as they said at the time of the hockey game, when you get Quebecers screaming out, "Oh, Canada," like that, you done screwed up.
Yeah. For those who aren't aware, Quebec is a province in Canada that has in the past threatened to separate. They are a French province, and they have often felt as though they get the short end of the stick. And so the joke is that if you've made a Quebecois person patriotic, you've really ticked off a nation. Okay, so one of the reasons I wanted to do this video was because I'm addicted to YouTube, and I have watched a lot of people covering the tariffs and covering this whole business with Johnny. And I think that maybe it's time for us as Canadians to speak up. And one of the things I feel that the coverage has kind of not gotten wrong, but they haven't understood the magnitude of it, is that tariffs, yes, we're not looking forward to it. We know it's going to get rough. We know it's going to be hard. But what is really important to Canadians is their country. The whole talk, every time he says Governor Trudeau, he puts another nail in the relationship, in the relationship coffin. People are so upset and so offended and hurt by the idea that he would want to take over Canada. And make no mistake, he's been very clear about it. And with Trump, if he says it, believe it. You know, and there's no reason for us not to believe it. He's made it, there's no other explanation to these tariffs. So this goes so much deeper than money. So much deeper than money. One of the things one of the things we were going to cover was a radio program called Cross Border, where they were talking about the 51st state and all stuff like that. And somebody was on there, and it resonated with me so deeply. Two things. First of all, it's the joke. How do you tell a Canadian and an American apart? Do you know, Grace?
Well, I was going to say by the Canadian saying sorry all the time, but...
No, the Canadian knows the difference.
The Canadian, sorry?
knows the difference.
Oh.
But this guy came on and he said, you know what? He said the similarities we have are superficial. They're things like healthcare and saying sorry and being polite. Those are superficial differences or similarities, sorry. But the differences that we have go to the very core. And he said, you can see it in the logos of our country that our founding fathers came up with. I mean, if you contrast life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to peace, order, and good government, those are two wildly different statements. One speaks to a more individualistic nation. One speaks to one where community is really important. And that is the big difference. And that goes deep and runs hard. And I don't think that the coverage for this has really tapped in and understood that. Tariffs
Absolutely.
Tariffs are bad and they're top of mind right now. But the anger that you saw before came from the 51st state comment.
It came from the threat to Canadian sovereignty. That's the most important word in this whole discussion is sovereignty. Yep. I mean, if China were to be making threats against American sovereignty, you can be pretty sure that Americans would not react well to it. And why they would expect us to react any differently is beyond me.
Can you imagine if somebody made that comment, and I don't even know any of the governors in the States, unfortunately. Do you know any names of governors in the States?
Oh, Ron DeSantis.
Okay.
Greg Abbott.
Premier DeSantis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you imagine if we started referring to the U.S. as our 11th province? Americans would lose their ever-loving mind. But they're shocked that we are. But I think that also comes from what I feel is a rather misplaced belief in their own greatness.
Yeah, their own superiority.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing about manifest destiny.
Yeah. Yeah. Why wouldn't you want to join us? We're absolutely all that in a bag of chips. And we're like, no, thank you. Anyway, we better finish this.
Yep.
Canada remains the best country in the world. We have so many reasons to be proud of our home, to be proud of our land, but I'm especially proud of our ability to come together when that is required. Canadians of different backgrounds, who speak different languages, have different religions. But, you know, when it comes time to defending our country, we speak with a single voice and walk hand in hand. In spite of all, Canadians will always be relying on each other.
Now, we've been through tough spots before. But every time we've faced long odds and seemingly insurmountable obstacles, we've not only survived, we've emerged stronger than ever. Because when it comes to defending our great nation, there is no price we all aren't willing to pay. And today is no different. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Amen. Amen, brother.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that struck me the other day when I was listening to Donnie talk, which I try and avoid it because honestly, his voice just...
It grates.
It grates and it just makes anger rise up in me. And I hate that. I am a peace-loving person. I like things to be calm. But he was complaining about, who was he complaining about now? The EU. They have taken advantage of us for long enough. He said about Canada that we were taking advantage of him. I am so shocked that a group like the Republicans that are still clinging to him, that they're okay with being made the victim. They're the ones who are always talking about, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you can't be a victim for your whole life, and you're just making yourself into a victim and whatever. And yet he has made an entire country into a victim. Everybody's taken advantage of them. Nothing is their fault. And they're okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a
because
thought.
I think it's because of they're not thinking in those terms. I'm not talking about the GOP or Donald Trump or any. I'm talking about your just average, everyday Americans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, everybody's having problems right now. Money's tight, housing is scarce, food is expensive, and it's the same down there as it is up here. I mean, like, but when that's all that people can focus on, they're not paying attention to what's going on. I mean, the unfortunate part is that the reason that Americans continue to make the joke about the 51st state is because, well, first of all, the media that they're exposing themselves to. I mean, just given what Jeff Bezos has done to the Washington Post breaks my heart. I mean, this was the newspaper of, what's her face's Watergate. And as you say, I mean, Americans are feeling like victims and they're acting like victims.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you are feeling that low and that victimized, poking at someone else is the only way to make yourself feel better.
Well, that's the whole premise behind bullies.
Yeah, exactly.
This is my chance to do a plug for Ground News. One of the things I was concerned about was, am I digesting the right news? How do I know what I'm reading, what bias there is, etc.? And this Ground News, and I think you have it too, don't you, Grace? Yeah.
It's a Canadian firm. Yep.
Yeah. And in here, it actually will tell you this paper covered it. They're left-leaning, and what the factuality rating is. So are they using a lot of facts or not? This is a centrist coverage, and it is high factuality, low factuality, etc. Because it was important to me that I want to make sure that I have the right information, that I'm not just surrounding myself with media that agrees with my worldview. So anyway, if anybody's interested in that, I think it's about $4 a month or something. Ground News. So anyway,
yep.
No affiliation.
Worth the bucks. Worth the bucks.
Yeah. So now what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the official opposition. He addressed the nation after our prime minister did. His name is Pierre Poilievre, and he leads the Conservatives. So when the election is called, he will be running against the Liberal candidate
in his riding. Now, that's something that we do need to explain very clearly to Americans, is that our elections are run by what is called first past the post, which means essentially winner takes all. So Pierre Poilievre, as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, he is going to run in the riding of Ottawa-Carleton, and there will be candidates running from the Liberal Party of Canada, the New Democratic Party of Canada, the People's Party of Canada. I'm sure there's going to be a communist in there somewhere, But so Pierre will run against these other candidates in his riding. He is not running to be the prime minister. But if the Conservative Party of Canada wins a plurality of the ridings of the 338 ridings in Canada, then he becomes the prime minister because he is the leader of the party with the most seats. We do not vote for our leader. We vote for a candidate for a party in each riding.
And that's why you'll often see people joining a party right before a vote for their leader because they want to have a say in who it might be. So, for example, if you might not be a conservative, but you could join the Conservative Party because you want to make sure that this really extreme right-winger doesn't get in to lead the party. So you go in just to vote against them. So people will do that too.
Yeah. I mean, and it's been happening with the Liberal Party leadership race right now. I mean, in fact, a lot of conservatives were making no bones about it on social media that they were, going to be joining the Liberal Party of Canada just to vote for, one of the lesser known candidates, because, I mean, I'm fairly certain that Mark Carney is going to win because he is resonating with Canadians right now.
Yeah.
So, but anyway. All right. So Pierre, here we go.
Now, Pierre, we split his up a little bit because it devolved into a stump speech. And one of the things that I've really been feeling very strongly about is that this is not a time for politicking. This is not a time for getting on your high horse and criticizing our government, criticizing anything that anybody is doing. By all means, take a position, put those policy things on your website, talk to people about what you think should happen. But the whole tearing down and nastiness of politics, as I have said to many people, Donald Trump divided his country. Don't let him do it to ours. We need to remain united in this one area. And you can't do that if you're tearing at each other. So I was not pleased when it devolved into a stump speech. But anyway, we'll get started. Oh, that's me that has to do that.
At 12:01 a.m., President Trump stabbed America's best friend in the back. My message to the President is this: Canada will fight back. We will defend our people and our economy, and we will put Canada first.
Okay, so first little bit, sounds great. Zero problem with it.
Yeah, no problem. And very much in line with the Liberal Party.
Very much.
Came in this morning, you must have been asking yourself, how could things get any worse?
This is where
these tariffs
falling down.
You were already suffering. You wondered how you'd pay the rent, or eventually dream of buying a home after housing costs had doubled over the last decade, rising faster than in any other G7 country. You've downgraded your diet, as food prices have risen 37% faster in Canada than in the United States over the last 5 years. You might be one of the 2 million people, a record-breaking number, lined up at food banks, a number that has more than doubled before these tariffs applied.
How is this helpful?
You likely noticed that your paycheck
is
not keeping up with the record inflation.
Yeah, like
as
how
Canada's GDP
is this
is growing
helpful
less and
to
lower than
Canada?
any other G7 country.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, it's self-serving is what it is. And that's what ticks me off, because leadership is not self-serving. True leadership is not self-serving.
Leadership is not fear-mongering.
Exactly. Somebody on Facebook said to me, well, I want to know where he stands. And like, absolutely. But telling us that, oh, it's so terrible. I personally not having a problem. I'm unemployed. I'm still okay. It's just, and I don't mean that to say that everything is rosy. That's not what I'm getting at. But he makes it sound like we're starving in the streets. We've downgraded our diets. What the heck does that even mean? But
it just means that we're not having caviar with our meals anymore.
Well, la-di-da. We get a cheaper cut of steak.
Country over the last decade. You might have noticed that your company has already been moving jobs to the United States as greedy and self-serving CEOs put their share prices ahead of your job, and $500 billion net has left from Canada to Trump's America under the current Liberal government. And now this. Counter tariffs must not.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I loved his line about how, you know, the self-serving CEOs, you know, and like, and then the further we go into this video, everything he talks about is going to benefit those CEOs. It's not going to benefit Canadians.
Yeah.
The question then becomes, do Canadians understand that?
Well,
Because unfortunately, Canadians are just as prone to the crap as Americans are.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I want to do is he gets into what, this is what we would do at the 326 mark. I want us to start pulling that apart as to what he really is saying.
Be a cash cow for the government.
There
Almost
we
every
go.
penny of the tariffs collected should go to tax cuts, with a small sum set aside for targeted relief to workers hardest hit by the trade war. None of the money should go to new government spending and programs. We must not allow politicians to dishonestly use this crisis to once again launch a debt-fueled, money-printing spending spree that will drive up inflation and further destroy the working class and hit the poorest people the hardest.
Okay. Ooh. So, for those Canadians out there who are not seeing anything wrong with this, or it sounds reasonable, or they don't really understand what this means to them, what he's saying is he does not want the government to help you out. He wants a small amount to go to those affected. What that means by affected, not sure. Not sure what that would mean. No new programs or spending. That means if he had been in charge during the pandemic, there would have been no CERB, there would have been no aid, there would have been no changes to anything, no new spending, because somehow a government helping their people is dishonest and self-serving. Then he's talking about, but hey, we're going to give tax cuts. Well, who does tax cuts benefit the most? Is it you, Grace?
Not us. Nope. Not us.
No, it's the people who make the money and don't need it. So basically he's saying, Canadians, you're pretty much on your own. I'm going to give tax cuts to my buddies. And we're not going to spend that tariff money. Not on you anyway.
Yeah, in essence, he is spouting exactly the same line as when Donald J. Trump.
Donnie. I prefer Donnie.
Okay, Donnie's fine.
No, you can call him whatever you want. I just industry Donald Trump does not control in Canada, home building. It is a homegrown industry. We must get rid of all taxes and red tape to unleash the biggest home building boom this country has ever seen, bigger than the post-war boom when our heroes were coming back from that war. We need to build homes faster than ever, and that means removing the bureaucracy, the red tape, the taxes, and the gatekeepers, and I will make it happen. That will also boost the demand for...
Who's going to be buying these houses?
That's a very good question. People that have money, probably.
Is it the people that have lost their jobs? Is it the people who are spending so much money because of the trade war? The tariff war? Is it the people who he has not helped out? Who's like, we're going to build all these houses. Well, who's going to buy them? Nobody can afford to because the unemployment is high, inflation is high. We're in a recession. But all these people are going to just come and buy houses.
Yeah. Well, if I were to put my own spin on this, and I mean, he is just adding to the confusion that Canadians suffer from, i.e., what level of government is responsible for what? The federal government is not responsible for building houses. The provincial governments are. Now, the federal government can give money to the provincial governments so that the provincial governments can actually, you know, maybe change up some policies or rules in place for the home builders and stuff like that. But it's not the federal government's job.
It's provincial, and it's also down to municipal. He's talking about cutting red tape and stuff. Well, it's municipalities that set a lot of the standards. Like the province will set, say, the safety codes, the building codes that everything has to live up to. But the municipalities also have their layer of red tape and standards and what is acceptable in one, so 0 lot lines where you have no land between you and the sidewalk. That was allowed in Edmonton for the longest time before the other surrounding neighborhoods accepted it, because it was within their jurisdiction to make those decisions. So to talk about, yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Softwood lumber. The loggers are suffering after Biden hit them with tariffs already. And 6, let's get our provinces together to knock down trade barriers so that we can lower prices and boost wages for our people. 7, we must secure our borders and rebuild our military to assert our sovereignty and strength in the world. All these things, axing taxes, building homes, unleashing construction of our resources, fixing the budget, stopping crime. All of these things were conservative fixations before the tariffs. Now they are even more necessary. But none of these things have happened in the last 100 days since Trump first launched. Look behind me. Parliament has been closed. Liberals shut it down to focus on their political battles.
Do you want to talk about proroguing?
Sure. So, for any Americans in the audience,
or Canadians,
what it means, or Canadians for that matter, what it means when they prorogue Parliament is the government will close Parliament down while they deal with stuff, whatever that stuff may be. And proroguing has happened, if I remember my stats correctly, about 5 times over the 150 some odd years that Canada has been a country. So it's not as if the fact that Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament back at the beginning of January, that this is, oh no, this is an awful thing, never been done before. No, it has been done before. In fact, the most recent person to do it was Stephen Harper, when he was Prime Minister and he was the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He prorogued Parliament back in 2006.
And why did Trudeau do that?
Because he resigned as Prime Minister. And so the Liberal Party had to run a leadership race. Because when a Prime Minister steps down like that, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and the fact that Canadians don't vote for the Prime Minister, they vote for the candidate in their riding. And so when Trudeau, when Trudeau resigned, that meant that, and he said he would step down once a new leader had been chosen. So right now, the leadership race has been run, and members of the Liberal Party of Canada are now voting for the next leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. Once that individual has been elected, then he or she will take the oath of office and become the Prime Minister of Canada.
The thing that got me about this was that we're in the midst of, I would say, probably the greatest threat to our sovereignty. Ever. And he wants the Prime Minister to call Parliament back so that they can sit around and yell at each other.
Yep.
I think there are more important things to be done right now. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, whether he has resigned or not, he is still our Prime Minister, and he has the legal right to make the decisions that he's making. And he's taking care of business. This is
he's doing a darn good job of it.
Darn good job. So why do we need to? Basically, what he wants is a leadership by committee. We're going to all get together and yell at each other, and the one who's the loudest gets what they want. I don't know, but that was just theatrics, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So the job-killing carbon tax is still in place. The sales tax is still in place on new homes. The No New Pipelines law still in place. The massive inflationary deficits still in place. Not one law has been changed. Not one tax has been cut. Not one action has been.
I mean, in essence, he is spouting off what he has always spouted off.
Yeah.
And that being Canada is broken.
Yeah.
It's just, he's just not using those words, Canada is broken, like he was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Because he's discovered over the course of the last, 10 weeks, that Canada is broken doesn't work anymore.
Does not resonate with a country that is pulling together and is united for the first time in a long time. Don't you dare tell us our country is broken. But he's essentially saying the same thing. Exactly. And I really hope it does not resonate with people.
I mean, I've always said that if the Conservative Party of Canada were to win the next federal election, I would actually be okay if they formed a minority government, because that would really put a leash on them. And there is no way that the Bloc, the NDP, or the Liberals would ever go for anything that the CPC is trying to do.
Did you want to explain a minority government?
Okay, so in Canada, there are 338 ridings. And, pardon me.
As you can tell, Grace is our government expert.
Anyways, and so in order to form a majority government in this country, you have to win 50% plus one of the seats. So in Canada, that means you have to win 170 seats or greater to form a majority government. If you get anything less than 169 seats, then you will need help from one of the opposition parties. And we currently have four official opposition parties in the House of Commons: the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Bloc. And there's no way the Liberals, the NDP, or the Bloc would ever help the CPC pass any laws or rules or anything like that.
CPC is the Conservatives
Party of Canada, yep.
I'm your interpreter.
Anyways, so as I said, I don't want Pierre Poilievre to win, absolutely. But if the CPC were to win the election, I would actually be okay with them as a minority government, because there would be a leash put on them from doing their worst.
Is that, in essence, what happened in Trump's first term? Like the American equivalent to that? He had some checks and balances?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, so Trump won the 2016 election, but he did not win the popular vote. But the GOP had majority in the Senate and had majority in the House of Representatives. And then midterms hit in 2018, and the GOP got wiped out in the House of Representatives, but they still held on to the majority in the Senate. And the thing is that in the Senate, as I recall, you need more, there are certain things that 50% plus one is enough for a bill to pass. But there are some things, like the budget, for example, or impeaching a president, you need 60% of the Senate. And the GOP don't have a super big majority over the Democrats in the Senate. And the GOP is never going to vote with the Democrats, and the Democrats are never going to vote with the GOP, so they end up deadlocked.
I really like not having a two-party system.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah. So I think that is it for the night. I'm not sure how long we've been going, but it feels like it's been a while.
It's been over an hour.
Yeah. So I think what we should do now, Grace, is we should both say those immortal, wise words of Bob and Doug McKenzie.
Oh, take off, eh?
Take off, eh? For those of you who don't know, Google it. So we will talk to you later.
Okay. Good night.
Bye-bye.